Whenever a big event happens, everyone hopes that it ends in the right way. Aaron Donald getting the Super Bowl winning sack, Kyrie Irving hitting a 3 to clinch the NBA Finals, the Chicago Cubs winning their first World Series in over 100 years. These are all expert examples of history-making moments in big events. And in wrestling, that's the main event of WrestleMania. Because in wrestling, even if nothing else on a card works, the main event has to. A great main event can make a decent show an excellent one, and a bad main event can make an okay show a terrible one. And we will cover the bad main events next time, but for now, I want to focus on the positives. I want to focus on the best of the best when it comes to WrestleMania main events, because there have been some good ones. Before I begin, a few honorable mentions. Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair from WrestleMania 37 for being a women's main event done right. The Rock versus John Cena from WrestleMania 28 for living up to the hype. And Mr. T and Hulk Hogan versus Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff from Mania 1 for being the one to start it all. Now then, I'm Jackson Haney from Insane Internet Wrestling, and here are the 10 best main events in WrestleMania history. Number 10, The Ultimate Warrior versus Hulk Hogan, WrestleMania 6. The first decade or so of WrestleMania is relatively simple. Have the biggest match on your show, be the one to close it out. It's very different from today's standards when great matches like Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels or Undertaker versus Triple H are often third from last, leaving the crowd tired out when the main event comes around. But in the early days, WWE seemed to have this idea pretty well set. And in 1990, no match was bigger than Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. Not only were they the two biggest baby faces in the company at that point, but also it was for the two top belts in the company. The WWF Championship and the Intercontinental Championship were both on the line. So yeah, huge. And like I said in the video where I talk about the best match from every Mania, click here to see that, this is one of those matches that is better than it has any right to be, because when you think of the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan, you don't necessarily think good in-ring performers. Sure, they are performers, but not great wrestlers. Well, this is a better match than anyone thought they could ever have, so props to them for that. And also, huge nod to the Warrior going over. I just think it's nice. Number 9, John Cena versus Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 23. This might just be the most underrated main event in WrestleMania history. I mean, I've said that enough to where it doesn't feel underrated, but people really don't talk about it enough as they should. And this is John Cena in his relatively early years. He had only been in the company for about 5 years at this point, but he was already WWE champion for almost a year. And WWE didn't know if they could trust him in the main event spot. I mean, you look at WrestleMania 22 and the reaction is, shall I say, polarizing, but you don't know if WWE or the fans will take him seriously. This match proved that they would. I mean, it's Shawn Michaels, obviously, so sticking Cena with someone as valuable and as good as Shawn is a surefire way to tell the fans, hey, this guy's the truth. This guy is going to be the guy that takes us into the future. I still don't think the fans were happy that Cena retained. I mean, this is the early parts of Cena wins lull, but in the long term, it just feels right. Cena was the new guy, the dominant guy. Makes sense for him to win. Number 8, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens versus the Usos, WrestleMania 39. I knew I had to have at least one match from Mania 39 on here, because both main events are excellent. I didn't go with Roman versus Cody because of the way it ended. One of the most underwhelming finishes in WrestleMania history. But this tag team match had everything going for it, and it was perfect. Now, there are still some people out there who think that Sami Zayn was the right choice to defeat Roman Reigns, and I'm not going to say whether or not I agree with them, but watch this video of me booking the 2023 Royal Rumble. Just go ahead and watch that. Anyway, I digress. While we were realistically never going to get Sami beating Roman, this is probably the closest we ever got. And hey, I'll take it. Because for starters, it's the first tag team main event since WrestleMania 1. It's for the top prizes in the company. It's got the best tag team in wrestling history. It had the hottest babyface in the company at this point, not named Cody Rhodes. There's just everything going for it. It is all lightning in a bottle stuff. And Sami and Owens winning was perfect. It was also a prick move because it made you think that Roman was going to lose the next night, and he didn't. So it gave us false hope. But if you haven't seen it, watch it. Absolutely amazing. Number 7, Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle, WrestleMania 19. I'm not going to talk about Brock Lesnar nowadays. This is not the time nor the place. But Brock Lesnar in 2002 was, no hyperbole, a monster. I know some fans probably got sick of Paul Heyman calling him the next big thing, but he was legit. Like, no one had ever seen anything like Brock up to that point. I mean, he debuted in April and won the WWE Championship in August. The same year he debuted. Like, holy crap. It's easily one of Brock's best matches, which is a no-brainer considering he's wrestling Kurt Angle. But this match gets bonus points for Brock Lesnar nearly killing himself. That's a terrible way to phrase it. But yeah, the shooting star press and the subsequent botch of the shooting star press is a moment that will live in wrestling fans' heads forever. Because, oh my god, the dude nearly broke his neck trying to do a shooting star press at nearly 300 pounds. How is that possible? Of course, Brock went on to win the match and the championship because he's Brock and he will strength you. Number 6, Seth Rollins versus Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, WrestleMania 31. WWE does this thing where they book themselves into a situation where nobody wins. I mean, sure, someone will win the match, but in the long term, nobody's happy. Prime example, WrestleMania 31. Roman Reigns had won the Royal Rumble and had guaranteed himself a main event match against Brock Lesnar. Nobody wanted Brock to be champion, and he was going to leave anyway, but turns out he wasn't because he signed an extension right before Mania, so boo. And also, people were sick of WWE shoving Roman Reigns down their throat, and they didn't want him to be champion, so boo. So what do? Seth Rollins, again, is plan B. It is honestly a miracle that Seth was still holding on to that briefcase, because if he wasn't, then this match would not be here at all. For 2 reasons. 1, it wouldn't have existed because Seth wouldn't be involved, and 2, because the match would have suffered. I mean, look at WrestleMania 34. No one was hyped for Brock versus Roman again. So, yeah, this really had some lightning in the bottle moments, and it's probably the best finish to a WrestleMania ever. The heist of the century is a legendary moment. Number 5, Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, WrestleMania 3. Yeah, this match is pretty high, actually. But I think it deserves it. Because in-ring wise, it's not great. I mean, it's the 1980s. Most of the matches are like that. But this match meant everything in terms of pure story. I think Mean Gene Okerlund said it best. Hulk Hogan, champion for over 3 years. Andre the Giant, undefeated for 15 years. Undefeated. It was the biggest match in the history of wrestling at that point. It really was. Not only because these were 2 titans of the industry, but also Andre the Giant had turned heel for this, which is unprecedented. Sense at the end of the day, because Hogan had beaten everybody on like house shows or whatever. There was nobody left. So what do? You take the biggest face in the company not named Hulk Hogan and you turn him into the biggest heel to face Hulk Hogan. And Hogan won anyway, sure, but that's how it was going to go. Again, it was the 80s, it was a simpler time. But also, the slam. The legendary slam, and Andre the Giant had never been slammed before, except for the 10 times when he was slammed, but don't worry about that. Number 4, Daniel Bryan versus Randy Orton versus Batista, WrestleMania 30. Now this was a bit of a tricky match to place. I knew I wanted it to be somewhere, but it ended up falling at 4. And if you watched my best match from every WrestleMania video, you'll know that I don't think this is the best match from this show. I think that's Bryan versus Triple H. But that match went on first, so can't really have it here now, can I? But the reason this is here is because it closed the book on the story WWE wanted to tell And it opened the book on the story the fans wanted WWE to tell. Daniel Bryan finally reaching the top of the mountain. And what's amazing is that this match wasn't going to happen originally. But the main difference between this match and the match from WrestleMania 31 with Brock, Roman, and Seth is one main thing. For Mania 31, WWE orchestrated this change. For Mania 30, the fans willed WWE into making the change for them. The yes chants were so loud that WWE had no choice but to concede and give Bryan the championship. Whether or not that pissed off some people backstage, doesn't matter. Bryan's having his moment for about a month until he has to vacate it, but shut up. And while it is one of the best triple threat matches in WrestleMania history, it is not the best. That would be number 3, Chris Benoit versus Triple H versus Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 20. WrestleManias that ended with a 0 more often than not had a phenomenal ending. I mean, Mania 10 had Bret Hart finally reaching the top of the mountain without Hulk Hogan there to screw him over. WrestleMania 30 had Daniel Bryan finally reach the mountaintop without Triple H and the Authority there to screw him over. But WrestleMania 20 wasn't about that. It was just about two friends, Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero, finally reaching the mountaintop together as friends through their own merits, and also cheating if you're Eddie. The image of Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero holding their championships as the confetti poured down is a sobering image now. Because when you consider that in the next 4 years, both men would be dead in tragic and legacy-altering ways. But in that moment, nothing was wrong with that. Nothing was wrong with Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero having their moment in the sun. And I think my favorite thing about this triple threat is that in the entire build-up and even the match itself, Triple H and Shawn Michaels tried to make it one-on-one and just leave Chris out, but you couldn't keep the crippler down. And in the end, he made Triple H, the guy who never did jobs, tap, clean, middle of the ring. Number 2, Steve Austin versus The Rock, WrestleMania X7. This was tricky. I could have put 1 and 2 in either spot, and this list would have been fine either way. But in the end, I trusted my gut. I went with my big heart rather than my big head on this one, and I put Rock and Austin second. And at the end of the day, the reason I think it's at second is because of Austin's heel turn, which, while undoubtedly a defining moment in wrestling, also drags it down a bit. Because why? Austin had been feuding with Vince McMahon for the better part of 4 years, and all of a sudden they're buddies now. I mean, it didn't make sense then, doesn't make sense now, but the handshake itself is just mind-boggling in a good way. Like, it doesn't give you a sense of why would they do that, it gives you a sense of what's going to happen next. I mean, now it gives you a sense of why would they do that, but you get my point. It also capped off the greatest WrestleMania of all time, so that gives it a whole heck of a lot of bonus points. And number 1, Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam Bigelow. Of course not. Number 1, The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 26. Whenever I think of perfection in wrestling, this is more often than not what I think of. Because never has WWE closed WrestleMania in a better way. Because this is a huge match on paper. Either Michaels' career or Undertaker's streak was going to end. You didn't know what was going to happen, but one of them had to. And the soundbite of Michaels saying, "If I can't beat you at WrestleMania, I have no career," just goes to show how huge this match really was. It's the best retirement match in the history of wrestling. Because Michaels was still going like he was in his 20s when he was in his 40s, and The Undertaker was at his best at this point. He was at his most malicious, trying to end the career of the dude who couldn't get himself to let it go. And Crown Jewel 2018 never happened. So this is the best career ender of all time. This is the best WrestleMania main event ever, and I will take no questions on that.
And that's the list. Thanks for watching. Did I miss anything out? If I did, tell me about it in the comments section down below. Don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe, and you can follow me on Twitter here. I'm Jackson Haney from Insane Internet Wrestling, and I will see you soon.